Well, great day, everyone, and welcome to Spirit and Mind, where we are committed to discussing current events with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and glad to be here with you, Spirit and Mind family, and so glad to have Dr. Shepard with us, our colleague and Spirit and Mind co-host. Dr. Shepard, good day.
Yes, good day, Bishop. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. How about you? You're in new territories.
I am in new territories, and thank you. That's a true statement. It is also a word of prophecy too, because I am venturing out, and I'm so thankful for the new territories and all the added blessings that come along with that, and even the added headaches. Because with new territories come new responsibilities, and so I encourage all those out there that you continue to add on to this year. And I must make mention that Bishop had an honor. He was one of the presenters at the Hampton Ministers Conference, and so we would love to hear about that, Bishop.
Oh boy, just shared a little bit on pastoral self-care, which is so important in these days. Want to encourage every pastor, minister, and ministry leader, ministry worker, and we'll talk about that a little bit today in our discussion on endurance. But take care of yourselves and do what you need to do, and that even comes into some of the things we plan to talk about today in terms of doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. That was my subject this week, encouraging pastors, ministry workers, and leaders to take care of yourself. But it applies to so many different areas of life and actually is relevant to some current affairs that Dr. Shepard and I will talk about today. So that was basically it. It's an honor, of course, but very important subject, particularly in these latter pandemic, postmodern times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Audrey Moody. I guess she was a part of that presentation, and so she has been a faithful listener. And
Wow, thank you.
For her. That's why I wanted to mention that, Bishop. We always have people who are listening and making sure that they're following us, and so that is great. But you said
I was nervous. So.
Oh,
so thank the Lord for His grace. I think it's part of the mystique and the prestige of that gathering, and so you want to be right to the glory of God.
Yeah. Well, you take that anxiety, you use it for good, and there's nothing wrong with some nervous energy. Nervous energy will make you do things that you normally wouldn't do.
I receive it.
Absolutely. But it's so important. I've been talking with various people, even leaders, even this past week, just about the importance of self-care. Somewhere along the line, we got into a culture, or we got into some type of thinking where it was like almost a sin, since we're on Spirit and Mind, like to take care of yourself. That is just so bogus, and that's not even what God designed for us to do in His will. And so we just have to make sure that we're doing that. And as you take care of yourself, believe me, others will be taken care of. That's the awesome part about it.
Yeah.
As you take care of your own self, it actually benefits everybody who's associated with you. When you don't take care of yourself, that's when the people go lacking. Isn't that something? When you don't handle your own business, the people who you say that you care for, that you're covering, and whatever the word you want to use there, you're actually causing them harm. I hope you're hearing me today. That you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And I know I am doing that. And in doing so, I'll say this, Bishop, you may even disappoint some people, because even this past week, I had to make some hard decisions relating to my professional conference and things like that, where I had to make sure that I was taking care of myself. I just couldn't handle the responsibilities. And what an embarrassment it would have been for me trying to handle some responsibilities and doing half a job instead of just saying, look, this is not in line with what I need to do now, and let somebody else handle it so the job can be done. That's what responsibility is all about. I know we have digressed quite a bit, but I
you were
had to
on
go.
point, Dr. Shepard, and that you raised a vital point, is that we talked about that self-care as an ethical imperative, that self-care as opposed to self-absorption is innately relational. It has accountability in it, which means that good self-care affects my interpersonal and professional relationships. And so it's not just for myself, but it's for those to whom I've been assigned and to whom I am connected, both personally and professionally. If we're going to fulfill the call of the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm, then to others, then we have to be in our best possible state to do so. So there's always, self-care always has accountability in it, accountability to others, accountability to those to whom I'm connected, and all that kind of thing. So no, you touched on some good stuff. So and relevant, because we're talking about self-care, we're talking about endurance and those kind of things. So Dr. Shepard, any well, we do normally have updates, but I don't know if we have any updates today. If not, we can jump right into what we want to do today.
Let's just go ahead and jump right on in. I see where we are as far as time, and so I don't want to get caught up with too much. Thank you for reminding us, engineer Minister Kat Henderson, that you can go to spiritedmind.vidflex.tv and go and watch all the previous episodes. Man, the series that we're on right now has been life altering and changing. And so if you know someone who is going through a difficult time, and who isn't that, and they need some strength to endure, this is a series that we want to promote. We want to encourage you to share with your networks. I see some wonderful people out there who keep in contact with me. Brother Kevin Pope, Charlotte Green, Cynthia Hackshaw. Good morning and afternoon to you all. And so please go to those particular sources of information. I know we normally do at the end, but I also just want to point out, even at the very beginning, you can also reach myself and Bishop Robinson at our contact information. You can reach me there. It's listed there. You can go to my website, drjonathanshepard.com. And it's been amazing, Bishop, that over the last few weeks, I've been getting more hits and people asking for referrals and contacts, which is no problem. Bishop C. Guy Robinson there, pastor of Tabernacle here in Baltimore, Maryland. And so we want to make sure that you know that where you can reach Bishop and check him out on Sundays as he is preaching the Word of God. Typically most Sundays. And so we praise God for he and his leadership and for his wonderful congregation. So just check us out and we'll do you some good. All right, Bishop, I think that's it. We get started.
Well, absolutely. And we love to stay in contact and look forward to having dialogue and feedback and engaging with you. So please reach out. We welcome it. Well, we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about endurance, because indeed our endurance has been tested over this last year or so, and endurance is so critical to overcoming some of the situations and achieving certain goals that we have established in life. And so we've talked about last week we talked about some recommendations for endurance, and we encourage you again, if you go to those websites, you can look at our previous broadcasts and you can see in more detail the substratum, the base upon which we're building today. But in terms of recommendations for endurance, in terms of a brief recap, we talked about, first of all, envisioning success. Seeing it before you see it, if you will, even while you're going through the process, to be able to envision success. Secondly, recommendation for endurance is engaging the mind, focusing on something else during a physically demanding experience. It's sort of like the analogy of having the headphones and listening to a good song while you're on the treadmill or out jogging in the park. Engaging the mind can help the process. Same amount of time, but it can seem quicker when your mind is engaged in a healthy way. Um, Thirdly, we talked about encouraging yourself. And these recommendations come from the International Sports Sciences Association for persons who are training for athletic events, but they also have powerful spiritual metaphors, as the scriptures are full of athletic metaphors as well. So the third one was encourage yourself. During a marathon or whatever, what you say to yourself can influence, you got this, you can handle this. If you tell yourself this is hard, I'm out of wind, I can't breathe, you tell yourself those kind of things while you're going through it, and it can delay your success or perhaps even hinder it. But like the woman with the issue of blood, who the Bible says as she was reaching, she said to herself or within herself. So that self-talk is very important as it pertains to our endurance. They're the three things we talked about last week, and we gave scriptural examples for each. Then another I want to add to it today is pacing yourself to endure. That's part of the training process. But recommendation number 4 for today is knowing the importance of pacing yourself. The approach to a sprinting race can be different from a marathon event. It's a totally different technique if you're running a marathon versus if you're running a sprint. So the process that you're in, whatever you're going for, whether it is you just started school, are you in your freshman year? Is it a marathon? Or are you at the waning years of your senior moments where you need that final push? Are your goals long, intermediate, or short range goals? Are they realistic? Are you in a marathon with a sprint mentality and sprint expectations? Because that's when you thought it would be sooner than it actually is, or you didn't know it entailed as much as it is once you got into it. But what are your expectations? Don't burn out too soon to impress. If you're in a marathon, you can start off and your nervous energy and your adrenaline kicks in, and you start off and you blast way ahead of everybody, but you end up being like the hare that ran out of wind and the tortoise in that story. And then others who start off slower get that burst of energy at the end and finish strong. In fact, that's what Ecclesiastes 9 tells us. He says, there's something else I've seen, says the wisdom of the preacher. He said, I've seen that the race is not given to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, which means that even if you're not the fastest, the strongest, the so-called smartest in the process, don't burn out too soon. God can still give you success when we depend on his grace. So pace yourself. That's my fourth suggestion or recommendation. Dr. Shepherd, please feel free to add, expound, or reframe some of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bishop. And we're going to be going through all the recommendations that Bishop has posted here for our learning. And we want to make sure that when we're talking about pacing yourself, there are even illustrations that we're seeing in our present day situations or present day society, let me say it like that, where we know people who have to pace themselves. I think it is so apropos that Bishop is utilizing this article from a sports journal or magazine that I'm going to actually stay in line with that. And so one person who has come to the forefront, Bishop, it's just so interesting to hear how people have approached the situation. And there's a young lady named Naomi Osaka. And so many of y'all know her as she is a young, I don't think she's 20 years old yet.
I think she's 23, I believe.
Is she 23? Okay. All right. I thought she might be 19, but all right. So she's
Double
in the
check.
early 20s. So she's at least early 20s. We know that. And with that said, she's one of the great tennis stars who has been battling to win different opens and tennis tournaments throughout the globe. And just a couple weeks ago, she stepped down from the French Open. As you know, this is the time for the French Open, and then Wimbledon is coming. Any of those sport fanatics out there, hopefully you're a sports fanatic like I am. I can talk sports with anybody except for boxing. I'm not I'm not big on boxing. Anyway, but tennis, she dropped out of the tennis match or the tennis tournament, the French Open, because she was concerned about her mental health. Wow. She needed to know how to pace herself. She was going to continue in the tournament, but she decided that she couldn't do the interviews after the tournament were over. She couldn't do the post-interview tournament, post-interview, the post-match interviews. There we go, because they were too tumultuous on her mental health. One of the things that if you don't understand, a lot of people like to be in the media is vicious. And even with us doing things on social media, there are people who have taken attacks that when you're trying to do good, people don't like that. And when you are dealing with media or you're in the public eye, there's just so much that goes along with that. And when you're battling anxiety and depression, like Naomi is, because she's still battling it now, she had to learn how to set boundaries. When you're pacing yourself, that involves setting boundaries. You need to know when too much is too much and be okay with that. That goes right back to what we were saying at the very beginning of the show. Knowing how to pace yourself, knowing when to take care of yourself, and being okay with that. I wish I had an amen right there from somebody out there in comments, because setting up boundaries allows you to pace yourself. And people went after her, Bishop. I mean, well, she's a celebrity. She's an athlete. She's getting paid to do this, so she has a right to be subjected to the abuse. I say abuse of and the ridicule and the criticism and all that goes along with the media. I can hear that point, but she also has a right to protect her own mental health from those things when she knows that she's not operating at a level at which she can handle that. Man, I wish more people would catch a hold to that. When you know that you're not functioning at a level where you can handle some of the scrutiny that comes along with the position that you hold, it's okay to set up the boundary and to pace yourself and to say, look, I need to step this one out. I need to sit this one out. That's what I had to do in the relation to the comment that I made about the professional organization role that they wanted me to play this past weekend. I had to sit that one out, and I'm okay with that because I know that I was pacing myself with that. And by me pacing myself, I'm actually setting up that boundary so that I'll be okay. Bishop, so many people don't understand the mental health issue that is involved in sports. Sometimes they say people are sitting out because of various injury reports. But could you imagine the injury report saying depression?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
What will we do? What if the injury report said suicidal ideation? And that's what some of the sports players, that's what some of the sports figures are dealing with. You think about the different ones who have been utilizing drugs, utilizing other harmful methods to mask the pain that they're going through. It's tough to endure. All right. I have not lost where I am. It's tough to endure when you're under that pressure to perform at a certain level consistently. So we as Christians, we go through life every day. I don't have to say as Christians, we as people, human beings that God has created us, we should be living out our purpose every single day. And as you're doing that, you must pace yourself. And even when you go under scrutiny, if you're a Christian, you'll be scrutinized for that. If you're a black person, you'll be scrutinized for that. If you're a woman, you'll be scrutinized for that. If you're a man, you'll be scrutinized for that. There's just, it doesn't really matter. Truthfully, that's what I'm getting at. There's certain things that people will put you under, and for the pressure, put you under pressure to see whether or not can you handle the endurance, or can you handle the endurance test. So wanted to bring that to light. Money, fast cars, lavish homes do not exempt athletes, do not exempt any of us from tragedy, injury, and illness. There is no platform, and I'll just say this again. There is no platform for athletes to express mental health as a concern. We must set boundaries around the activities and things that we've been called to do, especially for mental health reasons. All right, Bishop.
Very good, very good. That's powerful, because athletic events are by definition so thought of as physical competitions and the physical preparedness. But this whole idea from the training of the International Sports Sciences Association on the psychology of it reminds us that we should be open, and perhaps that's what awareness will raise and expand the report to look like in terms of preparedness and injured reserve lists, because that's a powerful analogy to say that there is an injury. You just can't see it in terms of physicality. So that's a powerful piece that you have raised, and it's applicable, might I add, particularly in this case with Naomi Osaka. It's applicable, and it transfers to other areas. There's athleticism. There is it applies to people who work in the arts, and it applies, quite frankly, even to people in ministry or public service. And that's what I mean. What I mean by that is this: the stressor was not the tennis match itself, as much as it was dealing with the press and the people.
Wow.
In other words, and that's the tension with which we deal, and that may help somebody today. A lot of people, it's artists. You may love to sing, but it's the interviews and the press conference and the critics and reading the critics page. And some managers suggest that their artists don't even read the critics page.
Right.
You may love to act, but the engaging with the people and the critics and the supporters and all of that. And I don't mean this. It was Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist, playwright, and philosopher, who said, and I'll explain this in a minute, but it was Jean-Paul Sartre who said, Hades is other people. And he didn't say Hades, but what he meant by that is that he didn't mean that to say like we're better off by ourselves. He meant that there's a certain psychological and existential pressure that comes with being perceived through the eyes and judgment of others. And so that is an innate part. Some people, so with Naomi Osaka, she may very well love playing tennis,
right,
but be triggered by being perceived and critiqued and analyzed by others. And we can forget that the athletic things are now a business. And a part of the business is the promotions. And so the promotional aspects require the engagement with the press, because we want to market and promote the product. And sometimes we very much love what we do, but the business of it can be a stressor. Some people, when they retire, I know singers, please don't ever think that just because somebody is not in the top 10 charts anymore, that they have stopped singing.
Right.
They just stepped out of that spotlight because the grind of constantly being critiqued and constantly being evaluated and constantly being
Mhm.
commented on, they move out of that aspect. I know, since we're there, I know pastors who retired from pastoring but
Mhm.
have not stopped preaching
Right.
because they love preaching.
Right.
But it's the keeping people motivated
Mhm.
and living with the critiques that you have to have a grace to handle.
Yes.
And but for that grace, any of us could succumb under that pressure. And when you feel that grace lifting and the stress is kicking in, it is wise to say, for myself, I need to step back from this. So just because we retire or opt out of something doesn't necessarily mean we don't love it. It just means that we need to replenish and restore to pace ourselves or prepare ourselves because of the other stresses. I know a lot of people, and for all of us, those who think sometimes, and I'll close with this. But you remember when the sons of Zebedee and their mom asked, "Can we sit at the right and left hand of Jesus?" And Jesus said, "Can you drink from the cup that I'm drinking from?" Because you see the miracle services, you see the pulpit moment, but when you sit in the seat of the pastor, you find out that it's a whole lot of other stuff that comes with it
Mhm.
besides the preaching moment and the
Absolutely.
preaching. And honestly, that's why sometimes people keep on preaching, because sometimes that's the outlet.
Mhm.
Not justifying it, but just saying that there's a whole lot of other stuff. So I say that to come back to the Naomi pieces, that we see the tennis matches and the victories and the phenom that is this 23-year-old exceptionally gifted person on the court. But we have to give some space and
Yeah.
not assume that, again, that's a challenge of the gifted, that assumption of artificial intelligence or artificial maturity, that we assume that people are equally as strong and gifted and prepared and ready across the board as they are in the area in which we see them in their gift. Uh, and so that's why we have to pace ourselves. And I think that that was a wise thing. And we have to learn as a culture to be able to own our disappointment. I'm disappointed that I didn't see the match, but that doesn't compare to what needed to be done to take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's the part of me that wanted to be entertained, that wanted to comment. But the part of me that is a human being has to be able to relate to that we are more than what we do.
Right.
And so certainly that's so very important.
Right, right. Absolutely. And Bishop, I'm actually just going to stay there real quick because there is a picture, an article that grabbed my attention, part of Clinical Psychiatric News, which I am a reader of, a subscriber. And I don't know how this will come clear through here, but I did a presentation and is showing this gentleman as a black man. He is collapsed on the floor. And so I posed a question as I was presenting earlier at for a church, I believe it was, and I posed this question like, what would you entitle that caption? You know, what caption would you give this? And so I heard so many questions. I'm sorry, answers, I should say, to the question. Oh, I'm done, or man, I'm just through, or it's overwhelmed. Well, the caption here is, I don't know if you can see it as clear, is the pressure worth the cost? Is the pressure worth the cost? And I mention that now because that's where we get into this whole need for endurance. Because what we handle now, that is one of the foundational questions as we go through. Is the pressure of what I am going through, is the pressure of being the athlete, is the pressure of being the pastor or the leader or the other descriptive roles that Bishop just went through, is the pressure worth the cost? And for that, you could only answer that. But in this article and in this training, which we're trying to emphasize through the sports world, is that mental fitness is a must. We spend so much time talking about our physical body. We spend so much time talking about how we need to keep our temple of the Holy Ghost fit. But our minds are just as important. And I would argue is even more important because the mind controls the physical body. And so mental fitness is something that we must work at. I was looking at this, Bishop. When you think about mental fitness, just looking here at my notes, it's something that when you see mental fitness, it is a requirement. Um, it requires the brain training and the mental strength of which you were alluding to. It's required for endurance. Your brain will tell you it's easier to quit than going through the pain and discomfort. Isn't that something? Your brain, if you don't train your brain, it said you need to give up. Why are you doing it? It's not worth it. Your mind will say, if you just give up now, it will just alleviate all the stress that you're going through. But you must train your brain. Hear me on that. Train your brain to move past the fear, discomfort, self-doubt, nervousness, and other negative emotions. And once you do, you'll find yourself being more successful and end up doing more. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what, even, when Bishop was talking about the nervousness of presenting at the Hampton conference, ministers conference, that's where that mental fitness kicks in. When you are mentally fit, you're able to utilize that anxiety to push you to excel, even at times when you didn't think that you could do the awesome job that I know that you did, Bishop, at the conference, or when you accomplished that feat, or when you were able to accomplish that championship. You think about the different athletes who play through pain, who play through sickness. I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I came from Chicago. Anything that Michael Jordan did, I was all over it. Had jackets, everything. Still wear a Bulls hat to this day, even though he's not on there. But I think about when he was sick with the flu in the championship, when he was in Utah. I'll never forget that. Remember last year, this time, they were going through the documentary about Michael Jordan. That was awesome. I watched every episode, even watched some of it again. But one of the major things that really stuck out to me was his mental fitness, how to play when even sick. That's what requires endurance. Remember what the word endurance means. It means to remain firm in the midst of suffering and misfortune without yielding. That's what the word endurance means. So mental fitness is a part of that. Other thing that also is wonderful about mental fitness and training, it actually reduces fatigue.
Right.
Wow, that's something. You find yourself being tired. You find yourself being drained. But when you're mentally fit, and that's what we're trying to encourage you to do, and we've got to get back to those lists of recommendations, but that actually reduces the fatigue. Many times we find ourselves where I'm mentally exhausted. I'm out of it. It's my mind. No, it's not necessarily your mind. You got to train your mind how to be able to handle what you're going through. And as you go through those mental fitness and training exercises, it will actually reduce the fatigue that you're experiencing as you go through the challenges.
Absolutely. That's a powerful thing on that balance and complement between physical and mental fitness. Particularly in the Jordan case, physically compromised to a degree with a cold or flu, with what he was dealing with, but mentally in this place to endure. And so can the flip be true? Physically fit and look like you're totally ready to play, but your mind is just not there.
Oh, absolutely.
And it affects your performance. And so this balance is so very important. And we've think in this context we've been sharing that we sometimes underestimate the importance of the mental fitness and mental preparedness, which is so very important. And before we move on, even with the Naomi Osaka piece, I do just kind of want to emphasize the difference between pacing ourselves versus quitting.
Mm.
That's where the longevity, is it a sprint or is it a marathon? She's 23. She's still got a career to go. And sometimes when you're pacing yourself, you pull back a little bit. A runner may say, on this part, I'm going to pull back a little bit because the course is going to work in my favor right here if I pull back right here. And to others, it may look like, oh man, why is she slowing up? Is she quitting? No, that runner is not quitting. They're pacing themselves. And then when we turn the corner, I'm going to turn it up a little bit more. And this is where I'm pacing myself. So pacing yourself is not to be made synonymous with quitting. There's a strategy to pulling back, to pulling forward. I'm filled with preaching analogies. There's a strategy to come in. You don't come right out the gate. You may want to establish some principles and get to the celebration, or pull back, or raise your tone. All of that is a part of good oration, and it's a part of good performance. Every moment in the play, the thespian is not in total full dramatic mode. Like, right. You pull back. There's times when your character is pulled back. There's time when your character is chill. So pacing ourselves is not the same as quitting. And taking a moment to say, hey, I kind of need to do some stuff to get mentally prepared for this and look out for myself to make sure I'm in my best care and coming back when ready, if desired, is pacing yourself. That's not the same as quitting. And so that's what I mean by pacing yourself. How long is your thing? The other recommendation, so envision success, engage the mind, encourage yourself, pace yourself. Number 5, check your friends. Check your counsel. I'm fond of Howard Kleinbell's observation that human beings are formed, deformed, or transformed by relationships. Every relationship is either forming, deforming, or transforming our authentic or God-given identity and purpose. And so that all is a part. Who you hang around when you're training, do your counsel, your circle, do they have a respect for what you do? If you say you're going to study, if you say for a big exam, if you say you're going to practice, if you say you're going to prepare, and they're all going out for a night out, do they respect that, or do they try to talk you out of your focus? All those things matter. We are social beings and are socially influenced. Both isolation and unhealthy social circles can negatively affect endurance and recovery. I'm reminded the biblical examples. One is Job. When Job was going through, he might be actually the quintessential biblical example of the need for endurance. So when Job was going through all that he was going through, in chapter 2, his friends actually are a source of strength when they just are present. Job chapter 2 says they came and sat with him for 7 days, saying nothing, just being in the room. The ministry of presence is what we call it in theological circles. So they didn't have to be there and say the exact right thing. They didn't need catchy phrases. They didn't need, they just sat with them and said, we're here with you. We're empathizing. We're sitting with you in your world. But it was actually when they began to talk. By the time we get to Job chapter 42, God says in Job 42 to Job, your friends did not speak of me what was right.
Wow.
God said that. God said, when your friends were just, now think about that, when you were just sitting there being quiet during my season I had to endure, just being with me, you were actually more effective than when you opened your mouth and gave bad counsel, bad theology, bad interpretation of events. God said they didn't speak of me what was right. And so who you hang around when you have to endure a season of hardness or endure a challenge, or when you are pursuing a goal. When you're hanging around people, and there's a verse that probably New Testament example I would say is 1 Corinthians 15 and 33. I think it is 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Don't be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits."
Yep.
My goodness, is it who you hang around when you are in a storm, who you hang around when you are in a struggle, who you hang around when you are pursuing an academic degree, who you hang around when studies get tough, who you hang around when your family is in a crisis can influence. They will either form, deform, or transform your situation. And so that's so very important in that endurance moment. Check your friends. You got to do an audit check. Some people may be your friends, but they don't have the grace to understand a particular situation that you're in. So you got to be very mindful of who has your ear, because, and I'll finish here, the Bible says faith comes by hearing. And then it later and qualifies, and hearing the word of God. Because what you hear continually in your ear, you will begin to invest faith in whatever you hear. And so that's why it's very important to check your circles when you are in an endurance process. Dr. Shepherd.
Wonderful. Which is why we want you to continue to listen to us, because we're trying to strengthen your endurance. Because what we're giving you here, hopefully, is fueling that. And I'm so thankful for the comments that are coming through. We got Karen Bowen, Maddie Evans, and Diane Sanders, Angela Pickney, Cynthia Hackshaw, and congratulations, Rhonda Hayes. We know you're working on your MBA, and I say congratulations. We hope that that will be coming to an end soon, and we wish you can speedy. Well, I don't want to say speedy because we want you to do it correctly. Let me say it like that. I do get concerned when people kind of go through the process a little too fast. That's but yes, we do wish you well as you're going through it. And she was just saying that she doesn't have as much time to socialize anymore with her friends. And I understand that, because when you're going through, whether it be through a academic rigor, whether you're going through a storm, a financial situation, maybe even a divorce, maybe even through a transition, a move, it does matter who you're talking to. I'll say that again. It does matter who you're talking to, because it will influence you. I don't have to say that too much more, but Bishop, you're hitting on it, because I'm looking at the things that are plaguing our people, and peer pressure is one of those. And I know so many people talk about peer pressure as being a issue amongst youth and young adults. Oh, no. Peer pressure, even in the geriatric age, which I take care of. Oh, you'll be amazed at some of the things that they'll tell me. Well, my friend is doing this, so I just felt like I could do it too. Man, let me tell you, peer pressure is there amongst all age groups. But I want to encourage you. One of the scriptures that I have been studying just even this morning in particular, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 again, but I'm just going to move all the way down to the 58th verse, which says, "Be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord." And I'll just stay right there. Be steadfast. Peer pressure will occur. What does steadfast mean? That means you got to be strong. How can you endure and yet you not be strong? It won't work. We want to strengthen you, because there will come friends of yours who will tell you you're on the wrong track. You didn't hear from God, just like the friends were telling that from Job. God forbid you be in a weakened state. And I've been teaching this, Bishop, a lot when people are grieving. When people are grieving a loss, you have to be careful who's surrounding you. I think about the people who were surrounding Mary and Martha when Lazarus was dead, and how they were what was called professional mourners, and how they were surrounding Martha and Mary and telling them, look, If Jesus really loved you, he would have been here. You know how people get in your ear, filling you up with stuff. And when you're at a weakened point, when you're at a point of vulnerability because of what you have endured, you have to be careful who is feeding into. That's when you have to not necessarily isolate yourself, and it may require that, but you have to really screen what you're listening to and who's saying it. That is so important, because as you're going to endure, they're either going to pull away from you the strength that is needed, or they're going to pour it back into you. And so, I look at that with Mary and Martha. I teach about that when I teach about grief, because by the time Jesus did show up, they were done. They was like, how dare you not be here? Could you imagine if there had been people that said, wow, when Jesus comes, it's going to be better. When Jesus comes, he's going to see to it that whatever comfort that is needed, can you imagine if that's what the people had said, as opposed to, man, Jesus, he wasn't no good. He just wasn't going to be here anyway. And I thought he loved Lazarus. I can hear him now.
Yeah.
That's how we do. I thought he was on his side and he not here. You know how we do. I was just thank you, Minister Kat. She was just saying some people gravitate to grief. They just there's some professional. I said this to a friend of mine yesterday, and Lord, it's the truth. They're just some professional funeral goers. They just love attending funerals. They at everybody's funeral. My God. Yeah, but I can't get them to go to a graduation. Can't get them to go through a wedding, something to celebrate. But they at everybody's funeral. Now I understand that they, some of their responsibilities, but I'm not going to weaken what I just said, because there are some people who do gravitate to grief, and you have to be careful of that. All right, I'm going to pull.
No, Dr. Shepard, you just said something powerful. That you can stand by that. There are some even professional mourners, as you said, but you have to be quicker. That's a powerful statement. Quicker to come to those moments than celebrations, and some people are more than graduations, and some people are more drawn to opportunities for commiseration than they are celebration.
Right.
The German psychological term for it is Schadenfreude, Schaudenfreude, Schadenfreude, which means happy joy, sad joy, and it's referring to a phenomenon which some people actually find comfort, personal comfort, in the misery of others.
Yes.
I'm not by myself. And so you have to know the people. Some people are more drawn to that because it means, looking at you, I'm doing okay. and so that's not to muddy the waters, but it is to say that's why discernment in these seasons is so very important. To be able to discern and do relationship audits with spiritual discernment, to show me the people who are assigned to sit with me in this season. And some people are not. And that doesn't mean that those relationships cannot resume later or something. It just means that for this, it might not be the best example or the best time, because right now I'm doing a series at the Tabernacle. And Tabernacle knows this. I'm doing a series I'm preaching in Acts 13. It talks about the first missionary journey that Paul and Barnabas went on. They ran into Elymas, the sorcerer. And Elymas is sometimes known as Bar Jesus or Bar Jesus. But Elymas is the sorcerer's whole objective was to capture the ear of the governor of that region and make sure he did not hear the gospel. That was his whole objective. And some people, I want to suggest, and I'm trying to say that Elymas is a spirit that doesn't want you to hear good news.
Wow.
That doesn't want you to get good counsel.
Wow.
That doesn't want you to see a therapist. That doesn't want you to make an appointment with your pastor.
Wow.
That doesn't want you to go to worship online or in the sanctuary. Wow. Because Elymas's entire objective is that Elimas benefits from you not hearing the liberating, encouraging word that will help you get through and to your next season.
Mm.
Any spirit that suggests that you come to events that's always pulling you out of worship.
Wow.
Any spirit that's saying, well, if he had loved you, if he had been here, Lazarus wouldn't have died. Any of those spirits, that's why I'm fool with church now.
Right.
Any of those spirits is the spirit of Elimas. The historical character is deceased, but the spirit is still in operation.
Wow.
That benefits from commiseration. And that's why it's so important to know your friends. Again, Job's friends were doing fine when they were there just to be with you. But when they started creating things and saying, well, you must have done something, you must be cursed. No, actually, God, I'm going through this, if you stay with Job, because God said I could handle it. It's going to make me stronger. So that's why that piece of knowing, evaluating, are they good? And let me just close with this. Sometimes the people who need to be in our circle and to whom we need to listen when we're in a season that we have to endure may not stroke our ego. Because the Bible says faithful are the wounds of a friend. And so sometimes the friend may be the one whose counsel is slightly irritating.
Yes.
But it is important to my development and ability to endure and get to where I gotta go.
Yep. Wonderful, Bishop. Wonderful, Bishop. I'm judging our time here, and I want to maximize it and not start on something and say that we did it and be cursory.
Exactly.
But I'll throw this out here, people who are listening and to our viewers. I want to, and this is not shifting too much, but I really want us to think about the amount of pressure that we're under. The amount of pressure that we're under just coming from out of a pandemic, and we're not even out of the pandemic yet. We're still transitioning to a whole nother world, really. And I don't mean just a new earth. I mean another world as far as operating in business, economically, even spiritually, how we conduct our spiritual worship services. It's a whole new world. Truthfully, it is. But I want us to think about what happens when we bend under pressure. I know we've been talking a lot about endurance and you know, we keep a positive spin on things, and we will continue to do that. But we didn't get time to do it today. But I want us to, as you're going through this, I thought about it as we're checking your friends, because the friends can steer you wrong. I think about when you're under pressure, and we mentioned this last week, Bishop, about how pressure will worsen delusions, fix false beliefs. Your friends will have you believing things about yourself that's not true. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. You'll have some friends try to blow you up and make you think that you're just a grander person, or they'll even lessen you to the point to where you don't even have enough self-esteem or self-confidence to make it through. It could be on either spectrum of that. And we were looking as a kind of a case study with former President Donald Trump, looking at how his lack of endurance during this season has really made him more unhinged. What do you mean lack of endurance? This man cannot properly grieve the loss of an election. And this is what we're seeing is as a result of a person who has been narcissistic for so long and living in a state of unreality or just lack of reality, that it's pitiful, it's sad, and it's so harmful to the people who are following him. And I expressed that, I believe, to you, Bishop, I think in private, but I'm just so concerned about the people who are following such a leader. And you have to be careful of the leaders who you're following, because it's more than just Donald Trump who's living in a world because of the pressure that they're under, that they can't endure, that they find themselves living in a false sense of security. They find themselves living in a false world where they think that certain things are going to happen and they're not going to happen. That all relates to the company that you keep. I hope you're hearing me on that. This is how this relates to point number 5, because when you look at the friends that you are keeping, if they're not pointing you to a true sense of reality and they're pointing you to more of those fixed false beliefs, and it doesn't have to be something that is so outrageous as with Donald Trump thinking he's going to take the presidency in August. You do know that that's what he was thinking, right? But it could be just something just totally off where, wow, if you're not careful, you'll start believing that. That's how cults became so powerful. That's how I think it was David. Oh man, I can't think of the name of the guy who was down there in Waco, Texas. David something, Koresh, or I can't remember the last name. Yeah, that's how people. So you're scratching your head and like, well, I would never do that. Oh no, I would never follow somebody. But yet you follow somebody who's leading you to go astray and not be a part of fulfilling your destiny. That's the same type of spirit. Oh, my Lord. Yes, it might not look the same. It might not even feel the same, but we have to be careful of the spirits that our friends will carry and that we open ourselves up to as we go through this. I pray, and I'm going to close on this today. I pray that as we're going through this series, that God will strengthen you to make the hard decisions, to be who you are, number one, and then to follow through on the commandments and the things that he has given to you, number two, and that you will be all that he has called for you to be, number three. That's what I want to see happen in 2021. I don't want you to be stuck where you were in 2020. I want you to come through. You've come through this far. I don't want you to be delusioned that you're going to go back to things the same way in which you left them. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen. Your same seat that you may have had back in the sanctuary, I'll just make it real practical. That's probably not your seat no more, because we can't sit the way in which we used to sit, at least not now. Maryland hasn't opened all the way back up like Illinois has. So anyway, I'll leave that alone. But these are just some of the things that I wanted to share with you. All right. I'm done, Bishop.
We'll continue next week. We'll finish with the others because it would be unfair to go into the rest of our list with less than 3 minutes left.
Yes,
but it was important that we really dwell on these pieces because relationship is so important. The Barna organization and the American Bible Society have a great study report out on the top 3 presentations of trauma in faith settings. And they are number one, bereavement and loss. And it concludes with number 2, betrayal from friends, broken relationships. That's why we stayed here for a minute.
Wow.
And number 3, abusive relationships in every form: physical, sexual, verbal, abusive. The top 3, according to that research, that the church must be prepared to address in this season in terms of relational challenges. And all of them are relational challenges. Bereavement and loss, certainly the loss not just of loved ones, but of a way of life, and betrayal, people that we thought were friends. Or actually were friends. We'll get to that later. But psychology of betrayal is they have to almost kind of be a friend to betray you. And then number 3 is abusive relationships. And so all of these are relationship issues. And so our relationships are so critical. So my prayer is that God would send you the right people at the right time, in the right circles, because there's safety in a multitude of biblical counsel. And blessed is the man, actually, says Psalm 1, who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. It literally says who you hang around can influence where we are planted and how we settle and how we prosper. And so my prayer for you is that God would bless you and even give you discernment so that your relationships, we have to be relational because it is not good for man to be alone. And so we are relational beings. The point of this is not to be in isolation, but the point of it is to be in discernment so that our relationships are intentionally purposeful, so that we are the very best version of who God called us to be. That's a part of the endurance. We pray that you're in a good house. We'll talk about that. A household of faith, a good community of faith. Stay connected to your pastor, your church. God put you there for a reason. Because where he plants you is where he wants you to bloom. And that may not be some of us have to drive past places to go to the place that God called us to be, because God wants you to bloom in the specific place where he has planted you, because relationships determine your destiny. And so may you continue to have healthy relationships. We'll continue our list next week on Spirit and Mind. Dr. Shepherd, any parting words?
I just want to encourage everyone, please stay safe. Get the vaccination. If you have not gotten it already, please stay safe. Crime continues to plague our cities, and I just want people to be mindful. If it's not the coronavirus, if it's not the cicadas, it is also the crime that is out there. So please be careful. And we do praise God for you. Again, you can reach us at the various destinations that we listed. And I say destinations, email addresses. Here's Bishop Robinson's again. Please reach out to him. You listen to him as he's preaching the word on Sundays at Tabernacle. And here's how you can reach me, drjonathансhepherd.com, or the other social media outlets. Please go ahead and reach out to me. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you all for watching. Thank you all so much for your comments today. Yeah. God bless you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So many testimonies in the chat line today. Please know that's a part, and we do go back and revisit those so that we can know what to talk about. But we celebrate what God is doing in the life of Angela Pinckney, and we celebrate. Somebody put up Wanda from Good Times. It gave me a great memory. Thank you so much for that, and we thank you for the persons who are saying that this encouraged you and was helpful. That's our goal, and by the grace of God, we look forward to seeing you next week on Spirit and Mind.